Channeled message.
Attachment does not always show up as obsession. Sometimes it shows up through erosion. You are still functioning, still making decisions, still calling the connection, whatever title makes sense on paper, yet your life has begun requiring more effort than it used to. Something is consuming an unusual amount of your internal resources, and the relationship keeps sitting suspiciously close to the center of it. The mistake is assuming the person must be the entire phenomenon. Sometimes the person is simply the doorway. Spiritually, there are destructive principles that require human agreement in order to gain expression, right? Envy needs somebody willing to entertain envy. Domination needs someone willing to dominate. Deception needs somebody willing to live through deception. Obsession needs somewhere to fix itself. A person can resonate with something long enough that it begins shaping how they move, what they seek from others, and what repeatedly follows them. Then they connect with you. At first, you are dealing with the personality. Eventually, you realize the personality is carrying an atmosphere. The connection begins consuming far more than the relationship itself requires. Your attention starts bending towards it. Your internal rhythm changes. Things that once moved naturally in your life begin requiring enormous effort, while this one dynamic somehow remains capable of demanding more. That is an attachment worth examining beyond psychology alone. Psychology can explain the nervous system activation, the intermittent reinforcement, cognitive preoccupation, stress response, and the way prolonged relational instability can alter behavior. All of that matters. But the spiritual question is different. Why does this connection seem determined to make you less available to everything that carries life? Think about that, because real spiritual abundance is larger than money. It is vitality, creative force, discernment, the ability to receive, the ability to build, the ability to love without abandoning yourself, the ability to hear God without another human being constantly occupying the frequency. When a connection repeatedly diverts those resources, the issue is no longer simply whether you and another person get along. Something has begun feeding through the relationship. And feeding does not necessarily mean the person standing in front of you is receiving everything is taken from you. Look at them. You looking? Yeah. They may still be empty, still agitated, still compulsive, still chasing, still dissatisfied, despite everything poured into the connection. You looking? Look at them. Your exhaustion did not make them whole. Your reassurance did not cure their insecurity. Your sacrifice did not create peace inside them. Your attention did not satisfy whatever kept demanding more attention. That should tell you something about the appetite involved. Some appetites are not designed to be satisfied. They are designed to continue eating. The human conduit can become trapped in that appetite too. A controlling person does not become free through gaining more control. They need control. The need for control expands. An envious person does not become peaceful after diminishing whoever triggered the envy. Another comparison simply appears, right? Someone who feeds on attention does not suddenly reach an internal point called enough. The behavior keeps requiring another source. So when you ask, where did all my energy go? The answer may not be that somebody stole it and converted it directly into a better life. It may not be that the energy was spent maintaining a system that survives through consumption. That system can exist psychologically. It could also carry a spiritual meaning. The relationship becomes a circuit. One person produces instability and the other spends enormous amounts of energy trying to stabilize it. One creates distance and the other becomes preoccupied with restoring closeness. You hear me? One violates and the other begins searching for an explanation deep enough to make the violation survivable. That circuit keeps moving. Energy keeps entering. Very little comes out transformed into anything worthy of what was invested. That is why some connections can remain intensely active while producing absolutely nothing. Nothing. Years of emotion, years of conversation, years of trying, years of spiritual interpretation, and somehow the relationship never actually becomes fertile. Intensity without fruit. That is a warning. A connection can be spiritually significant without being spiritually beneficial. Those two ideas have been confused for far too long. Something can awaken you precisely because you were meant to recognize it and leave it. Something can expose an opening in you without being ordained to occupy that opening forever. Something can teach you about your own consciousness without deserving permanent residence inside of it. You do not have to sanctify the attachment simply because breaking it requires spiritual strength. The deeper work begins when you stop asking only, why did this person do this? The question eventually reaches the limits of usefulness. The more powerful question becomes, what inside this connection kept requiring me to move further away from myself? Now, the architecture becomes visible. The attachment required disproportionate attention. It required you to override information. It survived through emotional charge. It remained important through hope, fear, longing, anger, fantasy, sexual fixation, spiritual interpretation, or just the endless need to understand. Notice that none of those require the relationship to be healthy. They only require the relationship to remain central. That is why hatred is not always liberation. Neither is obsessively waiting for karma. Neither is spending years studying the person until you can explain every pathology they possess. The emotional polarity may change while the orientation remains identical. You are still facing the attachment. Real separation involves turning your consciousness back towards its proper direction. God, self, purpose, life, the future, whatever was being starved while the attachment demanded constant feeding. That is the self-exorcism, not theatrics, not fear, not making darkness more powerful by obsessing over it. It is withdrawal of participation. Something cannot continue occupying your inner world indefinitely when you stop furnishing the room. And this requires more than physical distance. The person can disappear while the imprint remains fully operational. Their voice can become the voice you use against yourself. Their inconsistency can alter what your nervous system expects from intimacy. Their betrayal can make healthy vulnerability feel dangerous. Their chaos can train you to mistake calm for emptiness. Now the attachment is reproducing itself without the original person doing anything. Psychologically, the nervous system preserves the conditions it learned under pressure. Spiritually, the old connection is still influencing a life it no longer has permission to inhabit. That has to be cleared. Otherwise, you can remove the original person and unconsciously keep carrying the doorway. Then another person arrives with a completely different face and finds the same opening. This is why the face cannot become your primary education. Study what the connection was doing. Study the movement. How quickly did another person's reality begin outranking your own? How much of yourself had to be negotiated away for the relationship to continue? At what point did maintaining the connection become more important than observing what it was producing? Those answers matter more than whether the next person looks, speaks, loves, works, worships, or lives anything like the last one. A destructive pattern does not need identical packaging. It needs compatibility. It needs something somewhere willing to receive it. When consciousness increases, compatibility changes. You stop giving automatic significance to intensity. You stop confusing familiarity with divine recognition. You stop assuming every powerful pull deserves investigation through participation. You can feel something strongly and still remain still enough to observe it. That is spiritual authority. No panic, no fascination, no compulsive to prove what you sensed. You let the fruit reveal the nature of the thing. And because you are no longer desperate to assign meaning immediately, the attachment loses one of its easiest entrances. Discernment becomes faster than entanglement. Not fear, recognition. A person can appear beautiful, wounded, charismatic, spiritually gifted, brilliant, successful, misunderstood, vulnerable, or extraordinarily interested in you. None of those qualities answer the only question that eventually matters. What begins happening to your consciousness in relationship with them? Do you remain yourself? Can you still hear God without filtering every spiritual thought through the connection? Does your life retain its own direction? Can you say no without the entire relationship becoming unstable? Can you remain whole without that wholeness being interpreted as distant, rejection, disobedience, or betrayal? A healthy connection can exist beside sovereignty. An attachment wants to become sovereign over it. That is the dividing line. The point is not to spend the rest of your life suspicious of everyone. If anything, that will prove the old attachment still has influence. Now, it will be governing you through fear instead of desire. Spiritual sovereignty is not constant defense. It is knowing your own internal territory well enough to recognize when something begins trying to govern it. There is less fascination with identifying darkness and more commitment to remaining aligned with what produces life. You notice the difference faster because you know what your own essence feels like when it is unobstructed. You know your natural relationship with God. You know how ideas move through you when your consciousness is not occupied. You know how your body feels when it is not constantly preparing for disruption. You know what it feels like to belong to yourself. That knowledge changes what can remain attached. Anything requiring your diminishment begins feeling foreign much sooner. Anything demanding that you abandon discernment to preserve connection loses its glamour. Anything that survives only by keeping you spiritually occupied starts exposing itself through the amount of space it needs. And this is where the first experience stops being only a violation. It becomes an education in sovereignty. You do not come out of it trained to hunt the same person in different bodies, right? You come out of it able to recognize when the same destructive principle is attempting to establish the same kind of circuit. And they will try, maybe through romance, maybe somewhere completely unrelated to romance. The category is secondary. The movement is what matters. Something tries to become disproportionately important. Something begins drawing energy away from where your life naturally produces fruit. Something slowly asks you to surrender your own knowing in exchange for continued relationship. You have seen that architecture before. Now, you do not have to move in. That is evolution. The old version of you needed the entire experience before accepting the information. The conscious version can recognize enough to withdraw participation early. No grand confrontation required, no spiritual theatrics, no need to prove to the other person what you believe is operating through them. Their recognition is irrelevant to your sovereignty. You're not there to rehabilitate every vessel carrying something destructive. That is not your assignment. You are responsible for deciding what receives residence inside your own life. And when something has already attached itself deeply, removal is not an act of victimhood. It is authority. You break the circuit. You stop financing the occupation with your attention. You rebuild the internal structures that were altered while surviving it. You return spiritual authority to God rather than any other human being. You restore your own responsibility for your life, your mind, your body, choices, direction, and future. Then the attachment has nowhere productive to continue operating. That is the real victory. The real victory is not being able to tell everyone exactly what attacked you, right? It is becoming so internally coherent that the same architecture can no longer make a home out of your consciousness. You thought the problem was that you had become attached to another person. The deeper realization is way more unsettling. The person may have only been where the attachment found an entrance. And once you recognize that, freedom stops being about getting over somebody. It becomes about making your life spiritually unavailable for occupation.
End of message.